Another resistance that I think is really important is the issue of assimilation versus integration. Because what actually happens is that very often people will have to assimilate into the dominant culture. Laura Lismore wrote in a book called The Loudest Duck, she talked about the metaphor of the elephant versus the mouse. And if you're an elephant in the room, then you pretty much take up all of the space and you don't have to notice if there's a mouse in the room. However, if you're the mouse, you better know at all times where the elephant is, otherwise you're at risk of being crushed. So what in actual fact happens with the issue of assimilation is that people who are not members of the dominant culture, in other words, who are not heterosexual white Anglo-Saxon males in the corporate world, have to figure out how to fit in to the westernized norm of the dominant culture. So what happens is that women, people of ethnic minorities or people of color, people who are gay and lesbian, people from different religions, are all adjusting their style just a little bit in order to figure out what the dominant culture is doing, what the dominant culture cares about. And what happens there is that we begin to do it unconsciously. So we no longer realize that we've adjusted our style. And some people have to adjust more of their style than others. Some people leave pieces of themselves in the parking lot in the morning in order to come into work. Now, let me say, to be fair, that this is also true for white men. Because even although they are the dominant culture, they also have differences amongst themselves. So not all white men fit what I call the John Wayne westernized cultural image. Not all white men are alpha males in the terms of that definition. The flip side of assimilation is actually internalized oppression. And I'd like to talk about that for a minute, because in actual fact what happens is that when we are not members of the dominant culture, we tend to take in negative messages about ourselves and turn them in on ourselves or each other. So quite often what happens within groups is that we're not always as cohesive as people from the outside appear to think we are.